straight to it. And we have Mr. Mukesh Bhutani with us, who's of course the guy that everyone wants to hear from right now. Please explain to us what these new tax slabs actually mean for all of us.
New tax slabs clearly seem to suggest that the middle class and the lower tax paying fraternity will get the benefit based on the slab rates that were announced. I think the underlying philosophy being that with the growth potential and the increase in demand, the savings that the individuals will realize, they would like to spend it, and that will propel growth. That's one part of it. I think the larger story on tax collection trends seem to suggest that the momentum that India has gained on tax collection, which is robust all around tax collections, not just on GST, but also on direct tax, she doesn't want to lose that momentum. Because her giveaway, which she said towards the end, was just about 40,000 crore. And I won't be surprised if in the overall math, it adds up that substantial part of that benefit was given to the low taxpayers. She's also reduced the slabs from 6 to 5, which is simplification. I think it's a good start. Maybe not meeting the expectations that people had to reduce the slabs to 3 or 4. Also, the super surcharge has been reduced. So the effective tax, maximum marginal tax rate with the surcharge that stood at 42.5% has been brought down to 3%. So, you know, there is something for everyone in the budget, at least insofar as personal tax rates are concerned. The last point on capital gains, she chose not to alter the capital gains structure, viewed as complex, a large ask and expectation from the market. So I would have expected that she would have heeded to that expectation, but she hasn't. So I think there is something for everyone on the tax rates and tax slab structure on an overall basis.
तो मुकेश जी, मैं आपसे एक बार फिर से ये बात समझना चाहूंगी कि एक बड़ी खबर जो इस वक्त बजट के बाद निकल के आ रही है चारों तरफ, वो यही कि टैक्स स्लैब में बदलाव जो हुआ है और वो बड़ी छूट है। और अब जैसे 5 लाख तक टैक्स नहीं लगते थे, अब 7 लाख तक इनकम टैक्स नहीं देने होंगे, और जो नए टैक्स स्लैब हैं उसमें काफ़ी चेंजेस हुए हैं। तो पहले के मुकाबले जो ये टैक्स स्लैब में चेंज हुए हैं, जैसे 0 से 3 तक तो कोई टैक्स देना नहीं है, 3 से 6 में 5% टैक्स है, 6 से 9 में 10%, और ये तमाम चीजें वो कितना बड़ा बदलाव और कितनी बड़ी राहत के तौर पे हम देखें।
काफी under the new tax structure, so will this incentivize more people to shift from the old to the new?
टैक्स ज्यादा लोग देंगे क्या?
Certainly yes. So when we talk about tax rate changes, there are several changes which you need to look into for salaried, pensioners, and for self-employed. I think what got missed out in the self-employed, आज के regime में 50 लाख तक self-employed professionals के लिए benefit है. Simplified basis पर tax return file कर सकते हैं, 50% उनका standard deduction मिलता है. वो extend कर लिया है. Not just for individual self-employed, the threshold has been increased to 75 lakhs, but she has increased it even for MSMEs, which means that now MSMEs, rather than maintaining detailed books of accounts and computing their profitability, can also opt for the what is called presumptive basis of taxation. इसका मतलब आपको खर्चे का ज़्यादा हिसाब नहीं दिखाना पड़ेगा. So salaries, individuals, self-employed, pensioners, there is something for everyone in the slab rate changes.
तो बाकी तमाम अब मेहमानों को भी हम शामिल करेंगे और एक एक करके कि जो अब वित्त मंत्री ने बजट पेश कर दिया है, इंडस्ट्री का पहला रिएक्शन क्या है इस पे? जी, मैं आपसे जी हाँ.
मैं तो अपना सेक्टर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में के बारे में बताऊंगी. इस साल हिस्टोरिकली इट्स द फर्स्ट टाइम दैट द आउटले हैज रीच्ड हिस्टोरिक 2 डिजिट्स. पिछले साल पूरा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर सेक्टर की आउटले 7.5 लाख करोड़ था. इस बार 33% बढ़ावत की वजह से ये 10 लाख करोड़ पहुंचे हैं, विच इज द फर्स्ट टाइम एंट्री एंड इट्स अ हिस्टोरिक 33% इंक्रीज. इसके ऊपर बहुत सारे सेक्टर्स में, मैं डिटेल में नहीं जा रहा हूं अभी, बट काफी सारे सेक्टर्स में स्पेशल एम्फेसिस दिया गया हुआ है. रेल सेक्टर, अर्बन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, लॉजिस्टिक्स, प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना, 50 एयरपोर्ट, मेजर एम्फेसिस ऑन ग्रीन एनर्जी, the support of PPP to many other sectors not mentioned through the infrastructure finance secretariat. और सबसे बड़ी बात है कि जो स्टेट्स को फिस्कल डेफिसिट टारगेट दिया होगा, स्टेट फिस्कल डेफिसिट ऑफ 3.5, 0.5% is earmarked for power sector reform, which is basically DISCOM reform. So, बहुत सारे sectors में the FM has pressed the button on infra, and I would call it a 10-point booster dose for infrastructure.
और आप इसको अगर नंबर देना चाहें, जैसे हम लोग पहले भी कर रहे थे बात, तो इंडस्ट्री इसको कैसे आंकेगी? अच्छा बजट मान रहे हैं आप इसे विनायक जी?
देखिए, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर सेक्टर से तो हमारे जितने मांगे थे वो मोटे सब पूरे हो गई. So I would give it a very high rating on the outlays and the specific emphasis on areas that industry has been asking for, like municipal bonds has been mentioned as part of the urban reforms package.
This 10 lakh crores, this 33% increase that you talked about, let me get Mr. Ajit Gulabchand to comment on that. How significant is that in terms of the money that the government is putting into infrastructure? Is that going to have a knock-on effect in terms of everything that we want to see, like generating jobs, etc.? Your mic, sir.
Yeah.
It's on.
Yeah. As Vinayak said, that they have increased the expenditure on infrastructure to be done to 10 lakh crores for the first time. It is still less than what percentage we really need in order to grow at a faster rate of about 8%. We need to spend 13% of GDP on infrastructure. So this is not meeting that requirement. However, the increase is more than welcome, because at a time that we are struggling to get growth, which is hovering around 6.5%, which is a good thing, because don't forget, America grew at 6% for 60 years to become the richest nation in the world. So it's not such a big thing. But the fact is that this extra infrastructure will bear a lot of fruit. That continuous increase being done in this area is, in my opinion, a good sign. Besides, the budget does not have so many disruptive things, which might make you think that they haven't done enough. But it's better a quieter budget than something that disrupts.
When you say disruptive, what do you mean? What would have worried you?
Well, it needs a lot more. The reform that we are looking for, which create, for example, when you delicensed everybody in 1991, you created a reform that has rippled for 20 years. Something like this is a little disruptive, but helps. But nothing like that has been done. So, in terms of not messing around with the budget too much, given the issues of fiscal deficit, current account deficits, not adequate growth as we would like it, though it is better than most of the world, I think a quiet budget is a good one.
A quiet budget. Mr. Vinod Agarwal is sitting next to you. Mr. Agarwal, how do you look at your first comments on the budget? How do you look at it? I think for a lot of people right now, the tax thing is the big headline because it affects the salaried middle class. And in that sense, when Nirmala Sitharaman said before the budget that she understood what the middle class wanted and she understood their pain, has she, you think, finally listened to them?
Absolutely. I think this is a very good budget, first of all, I would say. And from the auto sector point of view, the allocation on infrastructure, it has been increased substantially, and it is happening over last few years. And the second is, as you know, the auto industry is also going through a lot of transformation and migration to the better fuels. So the focus on all the biofuels, decarbonization, sustainability agenda, green fuels, I think that is very, very commendable. It will help the industry to get into these green fuels. And then, of course, there are a lot of things which are there. For example, the inclusiveness, going to the remote areas. I think a lot of allocations have been made to all these sectors which might have been ignored earlier. So therefore, I would say it's a very, very good growth-oriented budget, and it this will put the country for the economy of 5 trillion.
तो आप सभी लोग काफी उम्मीद से हैं और होपफुल हैं और उसको अच्छा बजट मान रहे हैं और आप लोगों को लग रहा है कि ग्रोथ को, विकास को ये एक गति देगा। अंशुमन जी, आप कैसे रेट करेंगे और क्या आपको लग रहा है कि जो वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमन ने बात की थी मिडिल क्लास के दर्द को समझने की, तो उस दर्द को उन्होंने समझा है और लोगों में खुशी होगी? क्योंकि ज्यादातर लोगों के लिए, जैसा निधि ने भी कहा, कि हेडलाइन यही है कि टैक्स में बदलाव है, न्यू टैक्स रिजीम की तरफ एक पुश भी दिख रहा है, पर स्लैब्स में बदलाव है और कुछ छूट लोगों को मिलती हुई दिख रही है।
सबसे पहले ये जो बजट है इसने सारे इम्पोर्टेंट टॉपिक्स, जो करंट टॉपिक्स हैं, सारे कवर किए हैं। आई वुड गिव, चाहे वो ग्रीन एनर्जी के बारे में हो, चाहे टैक्सेशन, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इज अ बिग थिंग। सम ऑफ द इम्पोर्टेंट वंस आई थॉट everybody talked about infrastructure, no doubt, huge allocation. Skill development, so गवर्नमेंट की जो कैपेसिटी है, हम कितना भी पैसा एलोकेट कर लें, बट गवर्नमेंट की कैपेसिटी नहीं उसे इम्प्लीमेंट करने की। जितना भी बजट की बातें कर लें, एंड ऑफ द डे इम्प्लीमेंटेशन इज व्हाट काउंट्स। सो दे टॉक्ड अबाउट स्किल डेवलपमेंट, आई थॉट दैट वाज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। विमेन्स एम्पावरमेंट इज एक्सट्रीमली इंपॉर्टेंट। No country has developed or grown where they have not taken women along with them. Tourism is a big one. प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना को 66% एलोकेशन हुआ है, जिसमें काफ़ी अर्बन पुअर पीपल के लिए हाउसिंग बनी है। सो लॉट ऑफ इम्पॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट्स। एंड ऑफ द डे ऑल दिस इज फाइन, इम्प्लीमेंटेशन विल बी what would really help us to rate how the budget is.
जी विनोद जी, ये ग्रोथ ओरिएंटेड बजट है, इससे ग्रोथ को आप कह रहे हैं कि बहुत बल मिलेगा, तो अगर मैं पूछूं कि इसमें से आपको सबसे अच्छी चीज बजट में, अगर आम लोगों को हम समझाना चाहें, और इंडस्ट्री से कितना आशावान है, इंडस्ट्री जो है कितनी उम्मीद से, क्या अच्छी बात है और क्या है कोई ऐसी चीज भी आपको लगी जो बेहतर हो सकती थी इस बजट में?
देखिए, जो ऑटो सेक्टर है, ऑटो सेक्टर डिपेंड्स अ लॉट ऑन द इकोनॉमी. And if the budget spurs the growth in the economy, I think it is good for the auto sector. But can be better. Of course, one can always say that this could have been done or that could have been done. But I would say overall this is a very, very balanced allocation of the resources at the FM finance end.
जी अजीत गुलाबचंद, अगर मैं आपसे ये समझना चाहूँ कि ये अगले साल में चुनाव भी है, एक तरह से हम चुनावी साल में हैं और लोगों को लग रहा था कि एक पॉपुलिस्ट बजट हो सकता है इसमें, तो इसमें कुछ आपको ऐसा लगा है कि लोगों को खुश करने के लिए कुछ ऐलान कर दिया गया है?
सरकार अपने सिटीजन्स को खुश करने के लिए कुछ कर रहा है तो अच्छी बात है ना?
क्या ऐसी चीज इसमें लगी जिससे लोग खुश हो जाएंगे टैक्स के?
Certain reliefs have been given in tax exemptions so that leaving money in the hands of the people is not only good for them, it's also good for the economy, because they tend to invest it better whether they spend it or whether they save it. So from that point of view, it has been understood. And where the pain points are is in the middle class and the lower middle class and professionals which earn but go through intricate processes of filing tax returns, etc. I think this has helped. That by reducing their pain a little bit on one side and also giving them, well, considering there has been a much higher inflation, the relief was even called for just to stay at the same place. I think it's a good thing.
लोगों की जेब में ज्यादा पैसा बचेगा, स्पेंडिंग बढ़ेगी, ऐसा लगता है?
But Mr. Chatterjee,
always, wherever you leave money in the hands of the people more, you will get a growth in that country. This has been our
that would spur demand
experience of the last 30 years.
But Mr. Chatterjee, again,
There's also one more point I'd like to...
Please go ahead, sir.
I was point out, on the infrastructure field, a major issue that has been troubling infrastructure service providers is that their cost overruns, etc., which have been awarded to them in arbitration, don't get paid. They keep getting challenged in the court all the way to Supreme Court. So it can take as long as 7 to 10 years to get your money.
Wow.
For that, this has created a lot of trouble in the infrastructure service providers. However, they're now coming up with a scheme on slab basis to see if a voluntary settlement is possible. What is that the government wishes to bring this to an end so the legacy issues can be completely
But I just wanted to ask Mr. Chatterjee that, as you said last time, also there was a significant increase in the expenditure that the government announced for infrastructure, and now, of course, it's entered double digits. But how much of that has actually got spent? I mean, if you were to just do a report card of implementation, so one is announcement and then there's implementation. Where would you rate the government's performance there?
The infrastructure spend in the country is on a thumb rule basis. And you're asking about last year, it's roughly about 55, 45. 55% the center spends, 45 the state spends. If you see the data for the first 9 months, the central spend has been pro rata on track, but the state spend has been lower. And that is one of the reasons you will find that this budget, the FM has gone out of our way to create a structure to incentivize states to spend more. And if I may just take a few seconds more, to point out some signaling in this budget. There has been some very clear signaling. For example, you will see that there has been no mention of roads. Whereas for the last 10 years, no union budget talking about infrastructure would have, shall we say, not mentioned roads. It signals a certain maturity of the road network building exercise for the last 25 years in this country and shifts the emphasis to rail, urban infrastructure, green energy and logistics. So the nature of the public policy emphasis is also to be read between the numbers and the sentences in the speech. It's an interesting decipherment of what the government is thinking of are the emphasis areas of the future.